Everyone, and welcome to our webinar on the State Index on Youth Homelessness. We are so excited to be here today to finally have this fantastic project completed and to share with you all. Now, I do say that it's completed, but this, as we'll say throughout the presentation, this is a living kind of project. And so we want to make sure that any advocates who are looking at it, trying to use it, that if you see something that doesn't quite match up with your experience in your state, that you do let us know so that we can make sure that this is as useful a document as possible. So I'll back up a second. I'm Katie Scott. My pronouns are she, her. I am the senior youth attorney with the National Homelessness Law Center. I am relatively new to this position, but not new to youth homelessness work. During law school, I started volunteering with Street Youth Legal Advocates of Washington in Seattle, Washington, which was an organization that tried to provide civil legal aid to youth and young adults experiencing homelessness. And one of the main values of that organization was to meet youth where they were. So not having them try to rely on the current legal aid structures where you have to call and wait for a call back, but to actually go where youth are and to be youth directed in our representation, because we know that youth experiencing homelessness know best what they need. The National Homelessness Law Center, where I currently am, is the legal arm of the movement to end and prevent homelessness in the United States. And we do that in a variety of ways, some direct litigation work, a lot of advocacy work, both on a federal, state, and local level. And then we also try to provide resources and education to people who are in the movement working to end homelessness. So with that, I will pass on the mic to Erica Endres, who is our communications associate at the Law Center.
Hi there. My name is Erica. My pronouns are she, her, and as Katie mentioned, I am the new communications associate here at the National Homelessness Law Center. I'm also part of the youth team, and I'm a board member for Joseph's House and Shelter here in my neck of the woods in upstate New York. I was drawn to the Law Center for many reasons. The idea of working towards a society without homelessness, and in particular youth homelessness, very much resonated with me. As a child, I experienced homelessness with my mother for around a year. And even when we were not homeless, we were consistently housing insecure. Multiple evictions meant constantly changing schools and never feeling a sense of stability. This is why the work that True Colors United and the National Homelessness Law Center are doing is so incredibly important. I hope that the State Index becomes a useful tool for all of you attending today and for anyone looking to join the fight to end and prevent homelessness. Next, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, one of the co-authors of the 2021 State Index on Youth Homelessness, Gabriella Sevilla, youth attorney at the National Homelessness Law Center. Gabriella brings her expertise not only as an attorney, but as someone who has experienced youth homelessness herself. Thanks, Gabby. The floor is all yours.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I hope the screen you see right now should be me with the youth team awesome infographic Erica made next to it. So yeah, welcome. Let's take a moment. My name is Gabriella Sevilla. I am, someone with involuntary experience with homelessness. As a young person, I experienced it on and off throughout my life. I am an activist, I am an artist, I'm a big sister, and I'm human. And also the youth attorney at the National Homelessness Law Center. And those are all parts of me and who I am and what I'm here to talk to you about today. So my next slide, I hope, will be a picture of youth experiencing homelessness in America. That is me on the right with my little brother. Santiago, Sevilla. And yeah, I just wanted to take a moment and talk about that for a little bit. So that's what my piece is, and it's important to start, from the beginning, especially with how proud we are and how much we all want you to really use, respect, and understand the state index on youth homelessness. And I'm just here to put it into perspective and centering us as we begin like this journey to understand how do we end youth homelessness, right? And it's a question I asked myself sitting in this waiting room, like after 1,000 no's, right? Like I was 21 years old and Santi was 16, 17. I'm not sure, he's so young, like see how like skinny his face is. So I'm talking about them, and I'm talking about other youth, experiencing homelessness across America, and invisible, not invisible, in shelters, on couches, with friends, not with friends, in dorms, outside of dorms, in tents and encampments, like youth, or in street, like stations, like train stations. They're all over and they're hurting and they need our help and they're experiencing homelessness and they're trying to make it through. I definitely still had a smile on my face, as you can see in this photo. It wasn't the smile you're seeing right now, like how excited I am and happy to be with you all today, right? Like, I'm overjoyed. And this was so long ago to me, but it was only 2015. And we're in what year? 2022, and there was a pandemic. And, this wasn't the first time we were homeless either. This wasn't the last time either. I was homeless again after that, like since, and we're in 2022 again, and I'm 28 years old. And, my existence and the reasons why I'm like on this planet and here and talking to you all today is like, I want to prevent that. I don't want, another set of kids trying to figure it out. That it was really stressful. It, we listened to the Sam Cooke song today, like it, it almost broke me forever, but it didn't. And I'm here and I'm so happy I am. And that's why, I'm here to talk to you all today. So the State Index on Youth Homelessness, we release it every year. Today is the third year we are releasing this report. And this year it's different because I'm a part of it too. And we're just, looking at it with a different lens and making it like bite-sized and, something that advocates, people, human beings can use to hold folks accountable to youth experiencing homelessness in their state. So again, the index, right, is looking at how is your state doing to really help these kids, right? Like what was this state doing to help, me and my brother make sure we weren't experiencing homelessness? Where did they fail in the beginning? Like, let's take it back to, how did I get here? Like, I think I have to start when I was 4 years old. And that's another story that you guys like aren't ready for, right? So it's the systems, right, that I had, my community that keeps, me safe. And like the State Index on Youth Homelessness is identifying if your state has the community available to keep youth experiencing homelessness safe, right? Like, are you guys doing a good job to keep us safe? And we also hear, are folks like me here, right, on this call right now? Let me know, did we get it wrong? Did we think that youth are getting, are safe in your state and we actually, messed up? Like, let us know, let me know. I care about that. I want to figure it out. I don't want, more kids like me and my brother, right? Like like I said in my tweet, if you came from Twitter, there's no light behind our eyes in this picture. Like, that's very sad. And so some of the policy priorities we have in this new edition of the State Index include things like, preventing the criminalization of youth experiencing homelessness. Like, we were youth. There are things in this country still like curfew laws. Like, we've identified states that still have curfew laws that effectively make youth experiencing homelessness while unsheltered, like criminal for existing, literally for surviving. So definitely go back and take a look at that. And I'm not going to regurgitate everything in the report because you're going to read that. So I'm going to tell you stuff that's not in the report right now. So read that. The second policy priority too, we have is to make sure youth have this true access to higher education. Yes, we track what states have waivers for foster youth, what states have extra, good stuff for youth to enter college, but we got to talk about the system. So our report every year has always talked about the systems available to youth. Again, what are these systems again? This is the foster care system, the juvenile legal system, the public benefit system, the school system. And in this country, we also have to reckon these systems are our community, and this community needs to be working in the way it should be to address the needs of youth in that state, if that makes sense to you. And we have time for questions after this too. So the main thing too is like, I really hope you all like use this to just hold people accountable. This state offers free tuition to foster youth. These two states do not. Why? Like, why are we addressing that? Why not? That is an easy thing to obtain, right? I hope you read the report and you get those, you know, brilliant instances of, wow, that's great. They offer that in their state. Why not mine? And then you go ahead and you email me or anyone else, you know, on this panel, and we talk about it and how we can use the state index to really hold people accountable in your state, to get, you know, the support and services that every youth experiencing homelessness that wants and needs, they actually receive in a way that helps them actually reach their goals, like college or, you know, a welding school like my brother is in right now. I'm so proud of him. Like, that's what we want to reach. And I'm coming to you live from Baltimore City. So if you hear a bunch of fire alarms and cars, like, that's where I'm at. And I'll just run it back too and say, I'm so happy to be here. I am Gabriella Sevilla. You can call me Gabby. I am Ecuadorian and Puerto Rican. I was born and raised in Newark, New Jersey. I went to Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, Newark campus. I went to the Howard University School of Law. And I'm so proud of that. And I'm so proud to be here. And I am an expert on youth homelessness. And I'm a youth attorney, and I work at the National Homelessness Law Center. So thank you. And I believe next we have Dylan. And if you can share your screen, I'll stop sharing.
Hi, everyone. So happy also to be with y'all here today. I think you should be seeing this slide with a couple of pictures on it. I'm Dylan Wagusbeck. I am the Senior Public Policy and External Affairs Director at True Colors United. I use he, him, and they, them pronouns. I've been on this team at TCU since September of 2019, so a little over, or just a little under, maybe 2.5 years. Actually, I think today it's 2.5 years exactly, I'm realizing. And before that, I was living in Louisiana, in Baton Rouge for several years, doing advocacy work at our state capitol during our sort of like legislative season each spring, and then doing political consulting during campaign seasons in the fall. And before that, I come from New Orleans. That's where I'm from. That's where I grew up. Yeah, I'll also start maybe a little bit with the personal and then move a little bit more into the index itself. So you're looking at two pictures of me here. One is a picture of the back of my head on a bridge in, I believe, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, Christmas of 2011 when I was 19. I was in the midst of hitchhiking from Baton Rouge up to Brooklyn and then back to Baton Rouge, and like mostly because I did not have anywhere to be when the dorms shut down at LSU during winter break, and I sort of decided that I prefer to be moving and on the road than to sort of be like stuck in place and like unsheltered just outdoors in a city. And so this was sort of the thing that I did with my friend Joe at the time. And then later that year also, like after the dorm shut down at the end of the spring semester, you know, hitchhiked up to California and ended up staying at the Cove in New Orleans, ended up back home and staying in like basic center type program for a few months. And that was like I think my first time experiencing homelessness. But like as I continued to try to attend college, which I still don't have a college degree. It was incredibly challenging. I kept not having the financial resources that I needed to stay housed, and so ultimately had to decide: do I want to get a degree, or do I want to just like figure out some way to like stay housed and survive and take care of myself better? And so I dropped out of school because it was that, or like continue to try to figure out how to like sneak into the studio art building on LSU's campus after hours, because it was the only one that they left unlocked, and like sleep there. And went to work at a laundromat and got like my 30 hours a week, and like still sort of had the lights shut off pretty frequently, but made it work. And eventually I landed in an internship where I was introduced to legislative advocacy. And I share all of this like in part because like one of the things that we really want people to take away from the state index is this idea of like, you don't have to be like a professional advocate or a trained activist or a lawyer or Mckinney Vento liaison or someone who works at a shelter or a housing program to like be enough to do this work. You can just be a person, right? And like just be a person with an idea and with values and desire to see things change. And so that's what I was at the time, right? I was maybe 21 years old and had no professional experience doing anything like this, and got a 10 hours a week internship where I was supposed to be doing legislative work, but no one at the nonprofit I was working at had ever done legislative work. So they were like, do a bill, right? Figure it out, like do something. And so that's what I did. I made calls and I talked to people and I tried to figure out, what's like a legislative, it's like a policy problem that can be solved through the legislature in Louisiana that like would benefit people experiencing homelessness. And so with having zero background or experience in this, drafted a bill that got rid of work requirements for our child care assistance program for people experiencing homelessness, and got a legislator to agree to run it, and then like moved it through the process, through committee hearings and through floor debate in our House and Senate, and onto the governor at the time, Bobby Jindal's desk to be signed into law. And so when each year, sort of when we start to get on the phone with our colleagues at the Law Center in April and May to talk about like, what do we want the index to be this coming year? Like for me, it is always like, I want it to be the resource that would have like better equipped me to do that at the time, right? I want it to be something that anyone can pick up and use to make really serious, like substantial changes in law in their state. And so that's really what we strive for here. The other picture here is actually just back in August or maybe early September. It was a few days after Hurricane Ida, and being from New Orleans, it there is something about being from a community that increasingly experiences almost like a collective seasonal housing insecurity. And so that's an increasing focus of my work, and something that I hope we're all going to be talking more about as climate change continues to impact what this work looks like and what homelessness looks like across the country. So all of that said, I want to go ahead and I'm going to pause my screen share. Actually, I'm going to stop it for the moment. I'm going to pull up the website for the state index report, and we're going to sort of go through it just so that folks have a sense of how to use this tool. I want everyone to be able to use it and know how to access all of the different parts of it, and what sort of things are available. So I'm going to screen share again in a moment. And I see Katie just shared the link in the chat, so you can sort of follow along on your own screen if you want. Let's see. screen. There we go. Okay, I'm gonna make it bigger. I feel like it's really small. Okay, so you should be seeing the homepage of the State Index on Youth Homelessness website. So there's a handful of things here. You see up at the top, it's youthstateindex.com. So it's pretty easy to find, but if you want to bookmark it now so that you can remember how to get back to it, that might be good. If you go through this homepage, you'll see we have the policy priorities that Gabby was talking about a few minutes ago right here, right front and center, so that folks know sort of what we're working on and what we hope to really help support all of you in working on this coming year. And then we have this interactive map that shows all of the different states and codes them based on their scores either being passing, low, or critically low. Critically low is under 50 out of 100 points. A low score is above 50 or 50 or above, but not passing. And then a passing score, we sort of do it, you know, the way that it's done in grade school, right? A C or above, 70 is the lowest a state can earn and be passing. You can actually, so you can use that, but then you can actually go here and you could also click on the menu state fact sheets. Those are two places to get to the same place and look in more detail at what's going on in your state. So we're gonna pick Louisiana because that's where I'm from. This is the example. So what we have here for folks is sort of a breakdown of what percentage of the different like major categories of policies we're tracking each state meets. So you can see where Louisiana is meeting a pretty high percentage of a lot of these different metrics. Then we get down to systems and environment right here. We'll talk a little bit about what those are. And then you can also see where there's a difference in the score from last year to this year. So last year, Louisiana earned 66, which is a non-passing grade. This year, Louisiana bumped up to an 81, which is a passing grade, which is great. Something that we really like to see is that kind of forward progression. And you'll see later on when my colleague Aaliyah is talking that we saw that pretty across the board, that there's some forward progression, which is exciting. Then you go down here and we talk about in each state, what are things that are happening that, you know, that we want to specifically call out as like positive, right? Like what are some of the laws or the priorities that we track that we can check these boxes off for the state? And so we list those out. And then what are the things that are missing, right? What are some like critical, you know, policy items that should be enacted in each state that would get them closer to that score of 100? And then at the very bottom, you can go over here and it will take you, this link will take you to a Google folder where you can download the print off version of this one pager to be able to hand off to policymakers in your state, right? So that they can see both this sort of breakdown of the situation in your state and then also these recommendations and also the highlights. So all of that's available right here. We also have some sample communication. So if you want to help get the word out about the state index, that would be amazing. We would love to see that. And you can use these sort of sample, the sample language for posts or tweets and just like insert sort of your state and score and help spread that around for folks to use. What else? Let's see. So the other things that we have here, go back to the homepage, is a brief description of what the index is, a link to the full report. So this is where you can see all of it in one place, including the one pagers, but also like a big breakdown of like our analysis of the results, right? Of different policy priorities, explanations for like why we grade different things, right? And also explanations for how we grade them. So for example, there are instances where a state might have a policy, but it's not published anywhere. It's not written down in a way that's accessible to the public at all. And so the state might not get points for that. So those are the kinds of things we explain in this report. It's taking a while to load because I'm on hotel Wi-Fi, but you get the point. So you can download that from there. It's right here or up here, this button. And then lastly, a couple of things I wanted to show you, and then I will pass it on. First of all, we really want you to sign up for the State Advocates Network. This is how we're going to stay in touch with you and stay connected and help share sort of like resources and build relationships across state lines for advocates who are working on these issues and maybe have something to learn or something to share with other folks across the country who are doing similar work. And so you can sign up on the homepage for that and just let us know, any or all of these boxes, who you might be, so that we can tailor sort of resources to you. And then the last thing I wanted to show you is the spreadsheet. So there's a spreadsheet you can use to get a more detailed look at the metrics that we score. And so here you can see for each state, every single one of the 61 metrics, are you earning the points for having those metrics or not? And they're all listed out here under the categories, the major sort of categories that we break out in the report. And so you can go to that category. For example, if your state is earning a really low percentage of the points in this category of youth's contact with criminal and juvenile legal systems are limited or prevented, and you want to know why, like what are the, other than the key ones that are here in blue that we break out really in depth in the report, what are the other things that your state could or couldn't be earning points for? This is where you'll go to do that. So I'm going to share the link in the chat really quickly for folks to be able to access that directly, but it's also linked in the full report when you go down to the methodology. When you go down to results and findings, that's where you'll find it. But it's just 2021 bit.ly/2021 index. And index, the first letter is capitalized. For whatever reason, bit.ly links are capitalization sensitive. I can't explain that. So that's what I wanted to share with y'all. And then I'm going to pass it to my colleague, Aaliyah, to talk a little bit more about the index, and to introduce herself. I'm also going to pull these slides back up.
Thanks, Dylan. Well, while we're waiting for the slides to come back up, I really want to thank just Dylan and Gabby for sharing pieces of their story today. I at first was a little hesitant to sharing pieces of my story, but you two definitely inspired me, as well as Erica. So thank you for that. So my name is Aaliyah Jones. I am the State Policy Fellow at True Colors United. I've been here for about 6 months now. And during my interview process, I remember, reading through the state index in depth and being incredibly impressed with this work and the detail and how all of this data is analyzed. And being on the other side of this and being able to work on this, I'm even more impressed with just the work that we've been able to do as a team, and then the work that you all do as advocates and young people and policymakers to push forward this fight to end youth homelessness. So a little bit about my story. You'll see in this picture, this is a picture of me from college, actually. I went to a predominantly white institution, and I founded an organization called Colors. And it was a space for queer students on campus who also identified within the BIPOC community. And I was the president of the organization. And the reason why I founded the organization was because I felt uncomfortable as a Black queer woman on campus. When I was around, Black students, I felt as though the conversations were extremely heteronormative, and my identity as being queer was never uplifted. There was never a space for me to be fully me. And I know that I wasn't the only one on campus experiencing this. So I created this organization, and it was a community for us to just be ourselves in spaces that we otherwise could not. And then I've also had a very particular vantage point throughout my life, where I've been able to see how power and privilege quite literally oppress other people, right? So members of my family have gone through generations in cycles of poverty and or homelessness. And as a young person, I could never understand why, just because of the circumstances that people were born into, or just because of how someone identified or how they looked, they weren't granted the same opportunities or didn't have the same access to other people. As a young person, I didn't get it, and I didn't know how to help. And now that I'm older and I had the privilege to get these degrees and work in the environments I have. It means a lot to me to be able to give back to my family and to push forth policy that is working to dismantle the systems that are pushing young people into homelessness, that are keeping us in cycles of poverty, and that are disenfranchising marginalized communities. So I'm really excited to be here and share some of our methodology and results and findings from the report. And Dylan, you can go to that first slide. So Dylan spoke on this a little bit, but the methodology behind the index is that we evaluate each state's and the District of Columbia's investment towards preventing and ending youth homelessness by reviewing metrics and benchmarks across laws and policies, systems, and environments. All of them together represent a state's basic policy infrastructure related to homelessness among young people. The index divides these metrics into law and policy, systems, and environment sections, with the law and policy section further broken into 5 major categories. So a goal for me this year was to display our data differently. I really wanted states to be able to compare their results to 2020, but also to emphasize the growth and progress across most states, and to also continue encouraging young people, providers, policymakers, and advocates to prioritize the policy changes that are most pressing in their communities. So as you look through the report and you get to these one-pagers, you will see all of our metrics broken down, and you'll see the percentage in which there has been change from 2020 to 2021. Dylan, you can go to the next slide. So I think overall we were proud of the progress that we saw from 2020 to 2021. In 2020, there were only 7 states that earned a passing grade of higher than 70 points. And in 2021, there are now 10 states with an earned passing grade of higher than 70 points. And those are the states that are highlighted in blue. And then we also saw that in 2021, 30 states scored higher than 50 points compared to 26 in 2020. And those numbers may not seem to indicate much progress overall. However, the index measured significant improvements across the board. The mean score rose by 5 points from 52 in 2020 to 57 in 2021. Dylan, you can go to the next slide. So I want to spend some time just going over, some of the top 5 states that we saw on the index in 2021. So this is the District of Columbia, Washington State, Louisiana, California, and Massachusetts. They all ranked in the top 5. What's really important here is that we want to acknowledge that while the index provides a snapshot of what states are doing to improve their laws and policies, systems and environments for youth experiencing homelessness, many states with high scores on their index still face extraordinary challenges in addressing homelessness within their state lines for reasons that we do not capture by the index, which includes the state's broader economic policies and climate. We really wanted to take the time to address this because we understand that although the index is able to uplift these 5 states, there's still so much work to be done. And that's really important for us to acknowledge and to point out. You can go to the next slide. And in the bottom 5 of the 2021 state index were Arkansas, North Dakota, South Dakota, Arizona, and South Carolina. And we also want to take the time to say that although the state may have a lower score on the index, it doesn't mean that they are not putting forth impressive efforts to meet the needs of youth and young adults experiencing or at risk of homelessness. So if you are someone from any of the states in the bottom or the top 5, we want you to remain encouraged to continue doing the work, because across the board, we saw a lot of progress as we were looking through all of the data. I'm very impressed by how states such as Louisiana came up from a 66 to being ranked number 3 this year. And it just goes to show what happens when all of us come together to work towards ending youth homelessness. Dylan, you can go to the next slide. So there's so much more information for you all to explore. We invite you to take a look at the full report on the website as Dylan went through, and we are now excited to answer any questions that you may have. I'll pass it back to you, Katie, for questions.
All right. So looking through the chat, we have a lot of thanks to Erica, Gabby, Dylan, and Aaliyah for sharing their stories. A lot of desire from people to get involved with this work and be in contact after. So I think one thing I will just highlight, Dylan shared where on the Youth Index webpage you can click to add your information so that we can keep in touch about the index and how you can get involved. I do have a question in the chat. It says, will there be a campaign to share this info with the members of Congress and the Biden administration? Does anyone want to take that question from our panel?
I'm sure. I think that option is on the table and what we're trying to do and get ready for and organize for. So we need, I'm not new to the community that is empowered to end homelessness, but I'm new to this role at the National Homelessness Law Center. I'm new to this role where, we're on this higher platform. And yes, like I started in November too. So my first meetings, and if they're on the call, was with Schoolhouse, was with National Network for Youth, was with going to their conference, was talking with Darla. Joe, I think your question is really like, we're down to collaborate, right? Like this is not where one person is trying to figure this out. I do not have all the answers, even though I just laid out to you all how I have this immense experience and expertise that was involuntary, and I've experienced homelessness many different times from baby to now. I still don't know it all, and I honor, respect that, and respect you all. So I want to hear from other attorneys, youth, people. And the point of the Youth Index too was to start with a different lane. Let's focus on what's happening in states. Yes, national level is awesome and great too, but we want to make sure this change reaches youth. And what we learn too a lot is like the greatest change happens, right? Like closer to youth. And so that's how we are molding this, our youth work at the National Homelessness Law Center to do all simultaneously in communities. So I'm going to be trying to help on the higher level, right? Federal stuff. We released the state index to help you all on the state and local level to figure out all this stuff. You can reach back to us for, again, the technical assistance on how do we apply this and be the advocates we want to see and end homelessness the way, we want to, and reach the needs of youth experiencing homelessness. So I hope that answers a question. So thank you.
We do have one other question here. It says, I live in a bottom 5 state. Have you created a best practices document that we can see to help us move out of the bottom 5? Thank you for all your hard work.
I'll take that one. So Bruce, we have not created that specific document. I think our hope is that we're going to continue to work together throughout the year to create like additional resources that are attached to this report that can be pushed out to all of you. And that's part of why we're really hoping folks will fill out that contact form on our website so that you can be on the receiving end of those things. But also, like Gabby said, like we're here to like collaborate and provide technical assistance too. So if you want a time to sit down and just talk about, what is the situation in your state right now? What are the things that you would identify as like critical priorities inside of this index that aren't being met right now, we can work with you to help figure out, what might be a game plan for bringing together different stakeholders in your state and trying to put together a legislative agenda or an administrative policy agenda and get some things moving. Like, that's something we're absolutely down to help with.
I want to quickly mention real quick that, Bruce, while we don't have that right now, as Dylan went over, we do have recommendations for each state. So in your state one pager, you will see that we have like things that the state is doing well, but then also a bunch of recommendations on how you can improve. And we hope that you can also use some of the data visuals and the charts to see what specific policies just need a bit of work and practice in improving these areas.
I also just want to highlight, this isn't a resource yet, but it hopefully will be soon. The American Bar Association is in the process of updating their model statutes around youth homelessness issues. And so hopefully we will have, by the end of this year, actual model statutes that you can use on all of these different topics that could be like a starting point for drafting legislation in your state. Let me go back to the chat. There's a couple other questions here. What are some of the most common unmet needs of youth experiencing homelessness?
I think maybe affordable housing. I can speak to me and my experience and then to the index too. But for the index too, you'll see we follow systems, and a big major issue with youth experiencing homelessness is inability to access these systems. So we track things like if your state has emancipation laws, what age, can they access this system of care? So we also track if you can, have medical care on your own without parental consent. These are things about like youth independence. So sometimes, with youth homelessness, it is not one size fits all. That's why we released this index to tell you what's happening in your state, what you can do, what maybe you shouldn't do, So with that, yes, there are so many things and ways youth experiencing homelessness come to be in that position where they are unsheltered. But I think a main way, again, holistically, that's why we released a report with 68 metrics, is that we need to improve all of these systems. And we've laid out, how, do you allow consent? At what age? Is there a definition of youth, in your state? Is there an office of ending youth homelessness in your state? Does the government care about that in your state? There are things like that. And another, centering and what was important about this webinar and why we were speaking to you all from a real and honest place is we want to ignite and create those connections with state advocates, local advocates. And this word of advocate, it doesn't mean a professional, it's a person, it's someone who cares, it's a human being. And we want you to connect with you all and also, remove this like, yes, and I'm an attorney, but I'm a person with lived experience, and you've heard everyone else's story, so I can't speak for them, but that's who I am. And that's what we really wanted from you all today too, is thank you, Dylan, for, again, sharing all our emails and everything too, and to get at those hard questions individualized for all of you is on your state and based on what you can do, like ready to set up those meetings with you all and to provide, again, what the National Homelessness Law Center does, the technical assistance, to the movement to end homelessness. So thanks, and I hope that answers the question.
That's great. I just want to highlight some of the things in the chat. There was a question, do you have letter templates we can utilize to send communication to our senators and representatives? And Dylan did share a resource there. I know that is something that we're at the Law Center also looking into how we can improve that piece of the puzzle. We also had the question about if we see errors or omissions in the report. Is there a good way to share this information with you? And Dylan did share everybody's email addresses in the chat as well. So be sure to check that out. And Dylan, I saw you put a link there, the Advocates Roadmap. Do you want to explain what that is?
Yes, and I'm going to reshare those two things that I shared in the chat because I'm realizing I accidentally just shared it like directly with the people who asked. So we have this advocates roadmap link that I'm sharing right now that has some basic sort of like information about how to start engaging with your state legislature if you haven't done that before, or if you want a refresher. You know, how a bill becomes a law is pretty consistent across most of the states, and so we tried to put all of that information together in a way that was accessible for folks, like the general process for you to be able to understand. There are going to be some little details that are going to be different, perhaps based on where you live. And then how to engage in the legislative process. So we wanted to provide folks with some sense of like how to get started. We put the script that Katie just referenced in there for just a first email that you might want to send to your state representative or state senator just to introduce yourself and let them know that you're following these issues. And then other things that you might want to think about if you wanted to, for example, like launch a campaign to change a policy around youth homelessness. So that's a little bit of what you'll find there. And then this would be a good time for me to tell you that we also are going to be releasing, True Colors United is going to be releasing an advocacy toolkit later this spring. That's going to go into more detail about all of these things. And we're going to make sure that that's linked on the State Index website, but also we're going to be pushing that out separately as part of our Equity Hub, which is like our resource center for all of the various, like mostly provider folks that we work with, but really is for everyone to be able to use.
Awesome. And I see Gabby shared her email address in the chat there, and maybe Dylan can throw up his and Aaliyah's email addresses to the whole group. I have a question, which is this the only webinar on the State Youth Index?
No, I think this is, again, a spark. I would hope this is a start of a webinar series. Our youth team at the National Homelessness Law Center, Katie, Erica, and I, we have so much energy and passion, and we're ready to launch our Ending Youth Homelessness maybe webinar series. Feedback from you all on topics will be good. I already have topics in mind and ready to go. But why not refine them and make them, the best webinars to achieve the goals we want, which is to end youth homelessness. So that's really exciting. And maybe I can also talk a little bit about our social media should be improving to reach youth too. We really want to get, yes, I'm ready to end youth homelessness. Who wants to help is what Erica, our amazing communications being, is doing. And she will hopefully help us launch our new TikToks, our new campaigns to really find where youth are. Unfortunately, I'm old already. I think I'm on Twitter. I don't think the youth are there anymore. I'm just making jokes at the end here. But we're just really excited, and it's a heavy topic, and that's, how we flow with this, right? I'm a comedian too at heart. Just with some really heavy stories sometimes, but I'll sprinkle in the fun and smiles, and, we'll figure it out and get through this. But on a national scale, all together, millions of us, because it is a huge lift. We have millions of youth experiencing homelessness right now, millions of youth without a place to call home, without a permanent mailing address, without, so many things. So we have work to do. And yeah, thanks, Katie, for that question. Got me excited again.
All right. Well, I think that's probably a great way. Oh, there is actually one other question. So let me throw that in there. Although I'll first say that they're in the car right now, so they want to make sure that they get everybody's contact information, all the information. I just want to let everyone know we will, to all the people who signed up for the webinar, they will get an email follow-up email with all the contact information, slides, everything that you would need from this session. But anyway, our question here is, several years ago, your organization put out a document titled something like "Most recently asked questions about Mckinney Vento." Does that sound familiar? And is there a recent version of this? I don't know if Gabby knows.
Yeah, so again, I'm sorry, I moved very fast. Beginning the National Homelessness Law Center, yes, most certainly, when we started our work on preventing and ending youth homelessness, was very centered on McKinney-Vento Act, frequently asked questions, and all this support and services for youth experiencing homelessness in education. So we are still upholding that work simultaneously. And there should be recent versions, and hopefully in Spanish too, if I remember. And yeah, there's just a lot to do. And also we ask for grace and patience after this webinar to answer everyone's questions and come back and field things. I am so excited for a flood of questions and emails, but you know, I'm also a little scared. I have to answer everybody. But I will answer everyone. So be patient with that too, and know that I'm genuine in that. So Katie, whatever's next, or I can share our closeout video.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, I'll just put in there, Rita says that they were a liaison for 12 years and used that as their Bible when they were learning. And so requesting the link for any updated versions. So maybe we'll figure out a way to make sure that can get to you, Rita. And then I also just want to uplift, Thea says, thank you. This is the best session I've attended this fiscal year and ready to end youth homelessness. So really appreciate hearing that positive feedback. So with that, we'll take it to our closing out song.
Yeah.
And thank you all.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you all. We're